2026, and we're kicking off XOG on the road. We're going to be traveling, guys, traveling. And to do it up on opening weekend, I have decided to do a dumb thing. I will be in Washington on the 13th at Rowdy Audi, Boston on the 14th for the Boston Legacy debut against Gotham, and at BMO for Angel City's game against the Chicago Stars on Sunday. Yikes.
If you are in any of those markets, be sure to come say hi before the game to Eric. And we plan to try and hit all 16 markets this year. I will be in New Jersey for Gotham FC against the Orlando Pride on Sunday, March 29th. And watch this space for more dates to come. In the meantime, if you are a fan of the show, we are doing a big Patreon sale where you can get an annual membership for a big discount, so be sure to use the code in the show notes for that. And we have launched a store. We have an official XOG store where you can get all the best merch for the start of the NWSL season, and Patreon members get 20% off with an exclusive discount code for that. So those are all the fun little goodies from us. Stay tuned for the show.
Hello, and welcome to Expected Own Goals Cannonball Edition. I am your host, Eric Morgan.
I'm Evan Davis. Welcome to the first day of NWSL Season Preview Week, which is actually NWSL Season Preview Week plus a weekend, just given how large the league is. And the reason it's so large is because of the two teams we're going to be discussing today. Latest round of expansion has come, and today's episode features what might be the strangest, most exciting, most bewildering, most bizarre offseason the league has ever seen, the Boston Legacy. We were very lucky to have Emma Healy, who's going to be the Boston Globe's beat reporter on the Boston Legacy beat all season. Already has spent some time in preseason with the team and offered probably more insight than anybody else on the planet could in public and on the record, because this team has kept things pretty tightly lipped.
It's a black box. And so without further ado, here's our conversation with Emma Healy of the Boston Globe.
Professional women's soccer is back in New England. The Boston Legacy, after a great many years of anticipation, frustration, and a few wrong turns taken, will be launching their inaugural season in just a couple of weeks' time at this time of recording. And they also represent something kind of unprecedented in the history of modern professional sports, men's or women's, and that they are an expansion team with absolutely no drafts available to help them build their roster. Everybody is flying blind here and building the plane in midair, and that includes analysis and coverage of the process. But we are very excited to welcome the Boston Legacy beat reporter for the Boston Globe to walk us through all of it. Emma Healy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So let's start with something simple. Jennifer Epstein. She is the driver of the existence of this expansion franchise in the first place. She is the member of the ownership group who represents the club with the board of governors. She is the face of the ownership group. Talk to us about who Jennifer Epstein is, why she wanted to get into the professional women's soccer space in America, and what her big vision is for what the Legacy could ultimately be long term.
Yeah, I think Jennifer Epstein is a really interesting owner to look at. She and the whole ownership group, all four of the lead owners, have a really vested interest in women's sports in Boston in particular. All of them come from business backgrounds, and a lot of them have history, supporting women in business and in leadership positions. And Jennifer Epstein is one of those. She is the founder of this company called Juno Equity that is sort of, backs women-led companies. And so she has been a proponent of women in the city of Boston for a long time, and women's entrepreneurs and things like that. So it's interesting to see her getting into the sports space for sure. And I think the vision, anytime you bring a sports team to Boston, the vision has to be winning championships. That's just the standard in this city. And I think everybody recognizes that. And the ownership group especially recognizes that maybe starting out, it'll take a little bit of runway to get the team going. But once the team is going, you need to start winning championships. And that's just the standard that the city holds every team to. And I think she really recognizes that for sure.
There have been some speed bumps along the way, to put it politely, with the Boston legacy, the Boss Nation fiasco. We don't need to go too far into. I think that the internet did their job there. But can you give us sort of an update on what's going on with the stadium situation? Obviously, they begin 2026 at Foxborough.
And Pawtucket.
And Pawtucket. So what's going on with White Stadium? What's the status of a more permanent place in Boston?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned the name rollout. That was a big topic of conversation, especially, on the internet for a while there. But something that Jen Epstein said at the time that was really stuck out to me was that she and the ownership group really want to be held accountable for their decisions. And I think that's, why they ended up going back to the drawing board and sort of starting over with the Boss Nation name and switching that up in the end. They want to listen to the fans and the supporters and things like that. And I think that was good to see. For the fans, they were probably excited about, a new name, a new rollout, all that sort of stuff. In terms of the stadium situation, yeah, like you said, they're starting the season at Gillette Stadium. About half the home games are going to be at Gillette, with a handful of games at Centerville Bank Stadium in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which honestly is not that much further from the city of Boston. And for a lot of folks, on the South Shore or close to Foxborough, it's not that much of an additional drive, which was sort of their attitude in choosing that stadium. It's also a soccer specific venue. It's built for soccer teams. It's built for this purpose. And so that was, a good second option if they couldn't have their main home stadium. You mentioned White Stadium. There's plenty to unpack there for sure. Looking at, starting the season at Gillette really raises the question of, the importance of purpose-built stadiums for women's sports for this team, especially because, you see the Men's World Cup coming in, that pushes the concert schedule, and then the concert schedule pushes the game schedule, and that sort of pushes everything away, pushes everything to a different time period. And women's sports are pretty much always going to bear the brunt of that, and women's soccer especially. So you see the importance of a purpose-built stadium like White Stadium that is going to prioritize the legacy and women's sports and putting that at the forefront. But then at the same time, the argument against White Stadium is that the NWSL team is the focus, when maybe the stadium should be focused on Boston Public Schools, which is what White Stadium was originally for. So there's a bit of give and take there. You can see both sides of the argument, but it's been a pretty heated is the wrong word, but it's been a pretty contentious issue in the city of Boston for sure.
Yeah, can you actually maybe give the Cliff's Notes version of why it has become so contentious? I think we have an okay sense of it, but the ways in which all parties involved, whether it's the club, whether it's Michelle Wu and her government at the city, or the residents of the neighborhood where White Stadium resides, and the way that public financing is mixed into all of this, and the delays in the completion of the renovations. Can you sort of give us the most easy to digest timeline of how all of these parties have come to the positions that they now find themselves in as it relates to White Stadium?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like you said, it's a really complicated issue, and there are a million parties all converging on this issue with different perspectives and different reasons for believing the things that they believe in. It's very complicated, but the Cliff Notes version is proponents of renovating White Stadium and making it the primary venue for the legacy is that White Stadium as it stands, well, it doesn't stand anymore. They've demolished it at this point. But as it stood before, it was crumbling. It was falling to ruin. It was not being used in the way that it was intended to, because it just hadn't been taken care of over the course of its history. And so the proponents of renovating White Stadium for the legacy are that the Boston Public Schools students will get a state-of-the-art facility, the nicest, newest facility in the city of Boston, that they'll have access to. And, it'll be at half the cost to the city that it would be if the city financed the whole thing. So obviously with the club funding part of it, that's going to decrease the cost for the city. But opponents of that take will say that, you're not prioritizing Boston Public School students. You're saying it's for Boston Public School students, but it's not really. It's for the club. And then also that it is too large of a project and too much money. Really, that's what it comes down to. And environmental organizations said that their biggest problem is that it's the privatization of public land. And so that's sort of where that intersection happens. The Emerald Necklace Conservancy is what it's called. It's really a complicated web of things. The other complication is that the price has just gone up and up over the course of the renovations. I think the number is now, they're at $135 million of taxpayer money, of public money that they're planning to use for it. And obviously that is a huge figure. Mayor Michelle Wu said recently that is the highest it'll go. That is the absolute highest it'll go. It won't eclipse that at all, but still a big number for the city to pay for. So that's another point of contention for sure.
And what is the current timeline for its completion? Because obviously they're not going to be there this year. Are they on track to move the legacy in spring of 2027?
I believe so. So I actually haven't been out to Franklin Park recently. Last, I heard they had completed the demolition and everything is, set to be rebuilt. It's the only thing that could sort of throw a wrench in that plan, other than, potential construction delays and things like that, is if it just, the case against the stadium just got taken to another court. If that delays things again, if the court rules against the city, that could change the timeline. But as of now, I believe things are on track for not this, inaugural season, but the following.
Let's transition to sort of the front office here and talk, and I'm going to butcher this name and Evan will correct me for it, but sort of what kind of GM have you gotten the sense that Dominic Gouache is?
Yeah, I think anytime you're coming into a situation like this where there's no really precedent for anything, you're sort of learning on the job and figuring things out as you go. It seems like Dome has a really good handle on what it takes to develop and build a club. His experience, obviously, over in Barcelona is a huge, working for a legacy organization like that. He comes in with a lot of experience of what a winning club looks like. And you really can't translate that one-to-one because you're coming into a brand new situation that is, strange and unusual, and there's no precedent for anything. It's hard to sort of translate that over. But I think he, comes in with a lot of experience, comes in with a lot of development experience and recruitment experience, having led the club's academy in the US. So I think that helped really in the roster building side of things. He told me recently that up until this point, up until training camp began, you're sort of working to get to zero. And then once you get to zero, then you can start building. And so building the roster and filling out the staff and planning the home opener, things like that, that's all just to get to zero, just to get at the starting line. Now that they're at the starting line, that he feels like they can make a lot more progress in becoming a club and establishing an identity and that sort of thing.
On the field, you would say that the face of the club among players who NWSL fans might know is Casey Murphy, who has come over from the North Carolina Courage. Beyond that, Ella Stevens has had some success with the NWSL. And then Amanda Gutierrez is the super exciting young international talent coming over from Palmeiras in Brazil. Beyond that, there is a very, very low amount of consistent NWSL experience on this roster, to the point where, and I'd have to check this, we might be going back to the early years of the league to find a roster with this little amount of previous NWSL experience. For all the things that we've mentioned already on this episode about the unprecedented nature of the legacy, no expansion draft, no college draft, no pre-existing mechanisms to get players in. What do you make of Dome's approach to building this roster? A lot of international talent coming in as well. A lot of talent that exists sort of in that prime age window. 16 players on the roster between the ages of 22 and 28. I think that's fourth highest in the NWSL at the moment. What sense do you get from the players that he's brought in, or from what he has said to you, of the kind of team he wants the legacy to be on the field?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's obviously without seeing any games or seeing any scrimmages. I know they've scrimmaged.
Yeah, that's the other
already,
complication, right?
Yeah.
Right. We haven't
Flying
seen much
blind.
of anything, in terms of a game-like scenario. So it's sort of hard to project that. But so I can only really go off of what he's told me. And one thing that both he and the head coach Felipa said is that They're searching for players who are adaptable and can, learn a new system and in a quick amount of time, learn new positions if needed, play all over the field. Really, that adaptability is at the forefront. And the other thing, like you said about it being in the prime age, another thing that I think is really interesting is both Dome and Coach Felipe have said that, they're looking for individual development. They're looking to develop players. And if you have younger players coming in, they don't come in with these habits that you have to break or anything like that. They're really moldable. So that's really what they were looking for in terms of players, from what he's told me. And it seems like that's something that they've accomplished. You have players with experience, maybe not NWSL experience, but experience internationally or other teams, other clubs that you can really mold to the image that you want. And the other thing is when you have a coach, coming over from Benfica and she's coming in with this European style into the NWSL and she doesn't have NWSL experience. It's all about blending the styles of the individuals and her coaching style and what they want the team to look like on the field. So that adaptability is really like the primary focus, I think, when they were building that roster for sure.
Yeah, we've seen European coaches come over here in the form of like Alex Strauss and Jonas Eidevall last year, and to sort of varying degrees of success. But do you think Patau has a good sense of the challenge that is in front of her and the beast that is the NWSL, that is not like coaching the best funded team in the country you're coming from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you would have to acknowledge that on the way over. You wouldn't get the job if you didn't know that's going to be an uphill battle. I think in talking to her, she seems really confident in the team's ability to compete from day one. She doesn't expect to win every game from day one, but to be able to go out there, trying to win, not trying not to lose, is what she said. And so I think, you understand the gravity of the situation and how difficult it can be, but also wanting to show belief in your players and wanting to show, that you feel that you've built the correct roster for this situation, this really unique situation. She seems really confident in that.
You used the word club culture when we were chatting off mic before we started recording, and it is maybe the greatest challenge that GMs and head coaches talk about, to build a club culture from scratch the way you have to do with an expansion side. And maybe that's even more intense, or maybe it's not, if you think about it from another way, with a team like this where you don't have the NWSL experience that even most expansion teams have in year one. What have Dome and Patau shared with you in the off season about the kind of club culture they're trying to build? And maybe what have some players shared with you about the club culture they want to build?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest thing coming from the coaching staff and from Dome is the competitiveness. I think that's a huge part of it. Obviously, you're going to get that with any professional team. That's just you want the competitiveness from day one. But to get there, what they're doing is really prioritizing the interpersonal relationships, is the sense that I get. I went down to training camp with them in Bradenton, Florida at IMG Academy, and they are spending all day, every day together. Whether they're on the pitch or not, they are spending all day, every day together, really just trying to get to know each other, because pretty much all of these players had never met anybody else on the team, on the roster, on the coaching staff. They had never met anybody. There are a handful of players that had experience or had met others, but for the most part, they're strangers. And so the biggest thing they were prioritizing in training camp is getting to know each other, getting to be friends with each other off the field. Because once you have that chemistry off the field, that can translate to on the field a lot of the time. And, so they're staying in the team hotel, they're playing cards. They had a rule during training camp that the first 30 minutes you had to put your phone away. First 30 minutes of every meal, no phones were allowed. And that was a rule that came from the coaching staff, because you want to get to know your teammates, you want to get to learn who they are and not be just texting your friends or texting your family back home. So first 30 minutes, no phones. But what they found was that after those 30 minutes, nobody's rushing to pick up their phone. Nobody's rushing to watch TikTok or text their friends or anything like that. They're really enjoying the conversations. And all the players that I spoke to, for the most part, said that, they had never grown close with somebody so quickly as they had with their teammates in Florida. And I think that was a really interesting thing, because it came up a number of times unprompted. Everyone saying, I feel really close with these girls. I feel really close with my teammates, which is, I think, a great first step. So they're doing training camp down in Florida. Then they went over to Spain. I think they're still over in Spain right now. Sort of really just spending a lot of time together, which is the biggest first step for them.
Amanda Gutierrez, to come back to her, is the player that I think probably got the most attention in terms of off-season signings. She flashed an incredible amount of potential with Brazil at the Copa America last summer, tying with Claudia Martinez for the Golden Boot, and seems to possess limitless potential as an attacker. Have you had a chance to chat with Amanda about what she's expecting of herself, both in a brand new league where a lot of players from overseas sometimes can find that transition difficult coming into the NWSL, but also into such a unique project like the Legacy?
No, honestly, I have not had a chance to chat with her. But, a lot of the players express the same sentiment. Like, yeah, this is a brand new challenge. This is a totally something new. Something Casey Murphy said to me was that obviously this is a challenge and you're coming into somewhere with no expectations, but it's the right place to really challenge yourself. Like, if you feel like you've reached a point in your career where you're really established, as Casey is, you sort of want to find that next challenge. And I think that's what a lot of the more veteran players are doing, is like, I feel like I've reached a point in my career where I need something new. And that's what this is for a lot of those players, for sure.
Has Casey Murphy or players like Bianca St. George or Nichelle Prince, players who are among the minority of having a lot of NWSL minutes in their legs, have you gotten the sense that they are taking it upon themselves to fill leadership roles in the club because they've been around the block already and kind of know the ropes of the league?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. This is something I've asked a lot of the more veteran players. Where do you see yourself as a leader on this team? What does that role look like? And in part, yes, because if you have that experience, you can impart those lessons onto the younger players. Yes, definitely. At the same time, what a lot of the players said is that because you're coming in to this team with no precedent, no expectations of what it should, quote unquote, look like, everybody has a voice. Everybody has an equal say. Everyone has won the same number of games with this club, which is 0. And so what the coaching staff is trying to prioritize is hearing everyone's voices and making sure everyone feels represented. So yes, from a leadership standpoint, yeah, obviously those veteran players are going to take that role. But I think they're really trying not to be the loudest voices in the locker room or be the loudest voices on the field. They're trying to make sure that everybody is sort of heard and represented, which I think is definitely necessary when you're starting a new team from scratch. If you show up and you've already got captains leading the way, there's no obviously, yes, it's good to have team leadership and things like that on the field, but when you're still establishing a culture, it's good to sort of hear from everybody and get that perspective from across the way.
The Boston Legacy open up against defending champion Gotham, sort of a baptism by fire for an expansion team. But then the next couple of games, they see some of the lower lights in the league, like Utah, Chicago, Houston. Is there a timeline for sort of us getting an understanding of what this Boston Legacy team is and sort of where their ceiling is? Is there an internal timeline that you get a sense that they have? Or is this just a fuck around and find out season for them?
I don't know if that's how they would describe it. If I'm being honest.
Of course not.
No, I think something I said earlier, the expectation is to compete from day one. Whether or not that's going to happen, we will see. But that's the expectation going in, is that they're not fighting not to lose. That's not ever the goal. I think there will obviously be speed bumps along the way. But yeah, I think starting with Gotham is absolutely baptism by fire, like you said. But it also is, something someone within the team said to me once was, it's like, you want to get that Boston, New York rivalry going as early as possible. If you want support from the community, you have to hate New York. That's part of what Boston culture is. And so starting off with that, you're going to get a lot of fans, invested right away. So however that game goes, I think it'll be interesting to see, what people latch onto and what that rivalry looks like, for sure.
You're getting a sense from the players already that they might want to make it a little spicy on March 14th.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if the players are planning on any fisticuffs or anything like that. The Boston New York rivalry goes so deep in every sport, no matter what you're looking at, for sure.
I want to ask a question of just sort of, if you got a sense that Boston could add one more player in one more position to this team, where do you see the room for improvement? If the Boston Legacy could add one more component to their team before the season started, where would they add that player on the team?
I think one piece maybe I see them needing a little bit more is offensive firepower, scoring. I think they look pretty solid on the back end, especially in goal. They're pretty locked up there. Maybe a little bit more scoring. What Dome said, the GM Dome Gwash said recently was, they're not necessarily looking to add anybody else. Well, they could. He said that he feels confident in the roster they have. And because he feels confident, they have the ability to be really picky about who they're bringing in. That was his word, was picky, being really selective in who they're bringing in. I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen before the season or at all. But definitely something to keep an eye on.
And then the other question, the classic for us is, put yourself in the shoes of Philippa Petau. What's keeping you up at night about this team?
I mean, I think you have no idea how they're going to perform against an NWSL side. Like that's as vague as that is. Like they had 2 scrimmages down in Florida. I think they've got 3 more on their schedule. Beyond that, you don't know what this team is going to look like in an NWSL game setting. I think that's honestly, like, sorry to be so vague here and not specific on players or anything like that, but it's really just like, no one knows what this is going to look like until we see it. And that's the same case for the coaching staff. Like you can know exactly what they look like scrimmaging in practice, playing against themselves, playing a scrimmage, on a field with no fans. But, until you see them actually perform in that game-like environment, it's going to be, that would be what's keeping me up at night.
Yeah, even the Denver Summit at least has some like stalwart NWSL vets that'll be in their starting 11. This Boston Legacy situation is remarkable. It almost feels like the galaxy is just like opening up in front of you in terms of potential. And to that end, the projection model that we use at American Soccer Analysis is built on past NWSL performance. Well, guess what the Boston Legacy doesn't have very much of. And so the error bars, the range of variance of outcomes is so large, but because of that lack of NWSL experience, it defaulted the Legacy to 15th place out of 16 clubs this year. But we got to put massive asterisks on that table finish. Personally, I'm not even sure I'm going to know where I'm going to put them until the end of this conversation. But if you were to dare, Emma, and again, we want to stress, we're not holding this to you. No one else will either. But if you were to dare place a final table position on the Boston Legacy come November this year, where do you think that would be?
Oof. Again, like this is something you really don't know until you see it. I don't think I necessarily expect them to compete for championships. I don't think that's, in the first season. I don't think that's a realistic expectation. Do I expect them to be competitive? Yeah, I think that they have a lot of potential to win a lot of games. But I don't expect them to finish near the top of the table. If they do, that'll be a pleasant surprise for Boston fans who expect winning from their team. If you're not the number 1 team in the league in Boston, you're not somebody at this point. So I think they'll win enough games to keep the fans coming back.
All right. But if I'm going to just force you to just give me a number, say between 1 and, I don't know, 16, what number you want to throw out of a hat?
Oof. I don't know. I don't want to be held accountable for this. 10,
you won't be
12.
You really won't. 10, 12? Which one? You want to go 11?
12. I'll go 12.
Say 12. I think I'm going to go 13th. Amanda Gutierrez is a fun, exciting player. Ellis Stevens is one of the most underrated attackers in the league. And Casey Murphy, if she can turn it around from a slightly dicey 2025, might be able to have the defense overperform by grabbing some shots that probably should have been goals. So, and Utah is a disaster. So this is a league of parity. The bounces go right, and a bunch of players who we don't know anything about overperform. Suddenly 13th place seems like it might be a success.
Yeah. I don't hate that as a prediction. My feeling is I'm terrified by the range of potential outcomes.
Oh, me too.
Obviously, the worst version of this team is historically bad, and it's just like every international signing just doesn't hit in the way that they expected to in this league. And you're in a really dark place at that point. The other version of this, and Boston has lots and lots of smart people working for them in recruitment and analysis, and maybe they just hit a huge home run, and this is like a lower half of the playoff team. Like those both feel like completely real possibilities.
Yeah.
And that makes the hedge really different. I was going to go with 13th as well, but for the sake of just being different so that Evan and I have something to compete with at the end of the season, I'm going to join you with 12. I think that there are a lot of smart people there in Boston, and I think Amanda Gutierrez is potentially like, and I was wrong about Aisha Solorzano, so grain of salt this one for me, guys. But I think she's like a potentially double-digit goal scorer, goal contributor. So I think that's exciting.
This is one of the most exciting team seasons we will ever see, simply because it is so unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot thank Emma Healy enough for helping walk us all through that. You can follow her on Instagram at @byEmmaHealy and read all of her work on the legacy at the Boston Globe. Emma Healy, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys for having me. Lots of fun. I'm excited to see how the predictions shake out.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to do all the things you're supposed to do with podcasts. Rate us 5 stars, drop a kind review in your podcatcher of choice, and follow along with the feed if you haven't done so already. Tell all of your friends about us if they don't know about the show up to this point. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so at XOwnGoals. That's the letter X, Own Goals, on all social platforms. Keep your eyes out on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok for a lot of cool exclusive video content there. And if you believe we've made an own goal, please email us at xog@xowngoals.com. That's the letter XOG at the letter XOwnGoals.com. Looking forward to our next season preview very soon.